Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome back to the Global Community of Practice webinar. I'll be your host, Marlena Centeno, and I'm so happy to be with you today. It feels like it's been a really long time since we've had this gathering, and I'm happy to be here. I see some of you have already chatted your name and where you're from. I just want to remind you, if this is your first time joining us, we want to make sure that we see all of your chats. So if you can take a moment to just change your chat feature from to panelists and change it to all panelists and attendees so that everybody can see your chat. So go ahead and type in your name and where you're calling in from so that we can say hello. Today's webinar topic is about dealing with difficult conversations. As trauma healing facilitators, we might encounter difficult conversations as we minister to those who are exploring and expressing their wounds. However, sensitive and emotionally charged topics such as race, ethnicity, gender, and doctrinal differences may also arise in our groups. This creates tension and conflict. Although challenging, these conversations can present opportunities for deeper healing when groups experience these painful topics together. During this webinar, we're going to focus on facilitating sensitive discussions in healing groups. We'll explore our relationships to conflict, identify how to create safe spaces for dialogue, and learn facilitation skills for tense situations. Today, we're going to hear from friends of the Trauma Healing Institute. Live with us today are Heather Drew and Reverend Desiree Guyton, who have a wealth of wisdom, and I'm really excited to hear from them. But before we get into the official introductions, I just, again, want to say hi to all of you from around the world. We have Kenya, Bangladesh, Pennsylvania, South Africa, Ghana, British Columbia, and Vancouver, Singapore, Puerto Rico. Hello, 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 and welcome. I'm so happy to see you. I'm just so excited to dive into this topic and to hear more from you. Remember, you can always use the chat to ask questions, to post comments or responses to what you've been hearing. And again, before we dive into the live program with Heather and Reverend Desiree, I want to share a video with you that, again, other friends of ours have pre-recorded. Dr. Phil Monroe, who is a leader here at American Bible Society and also co-chair of the Trauma Healing Institute and psychologist. We'll also be hearing from Reverend Desiree, will also be on this pre-recording, and Baraka Paulette. Baraka serves on the THI Advisory Council. She's originally from Rwanda, but is currently living and working as a counselor in Mali with Doctors Without Borders. Some of you may know this organization as MSF. So we're gonna get into that video and then we'll come right back to share more. Make sure that you grab your notebook and use your chat button, or use the chat to type in what you've been hearing, what's standing out to you, but a pen and notebook is also really helpful. Remember, stick around to the end so that we can share more with you. Let's go to the video.
See you, Baraka, here, and to be here with you and Desiree today to talk about how we navigate challenging times and challenging conversations in healing groups. I want to make sure that our audience really gets to know you, so I want to introduce you first. Baraka, I've known you for quite some time, and I've met you before, both here in the United States, but also in your home country of Rwanda, where you have led other people who are interested in helping traumatized people. I know you've done a lot of work there, and presently you're in Mali. And so maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you are doing there.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Baraka Paulette from Rwanda. I'm currently married. It's now 14 years that I'm engaged in the mental health profession. And I've been part of trauma healing since the beginning, and I've been part of advisory council. And I had the privilege to attend the COPs. It's only this year that you are missing. And I'm currently in Mali. for mental health activities with the Medical Without Borders. It's now 9 months that I'm there. Yeah.
Excellent. And so for Médecins Sans Frontières, you are doing what for them? What are some of the activities that you're engaged in?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I have a contract with them. And it's a good experience because it's a non-Christian organization. So I had the privilege to experience the Christian organization and non-Christian organization. It's a quite learning. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And for our audience, it's good. Baraka has been an invaluable member of our advisory council, reviewing our materials, giving us input on what we should even talk about in our COPs when we have met. So it's so great to have you back, and Lord willing, we'll all be able to be together physically again, but this is the next best thing, to be able to see and talk in person.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
So let me start with this question to you, and Desiree, please jump in and engage in this conversation as well. We're going to be talking about it further, but when you are leading a group of people who are learning about their trauma and they are talking back and forth, sometimes things get said that could be offensive and harsh. Maybe it's about race and ethnicity, maybe it's about gender, maybe it's about faith. Maybe it's about culture.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you could tell us a small story about a time where you had such an experience and the challenge you faced about what do I do next?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Thank you. I had quite experience of such groups, either in Rwanda and in Mali. I'll try to share both, okay, because it's totally different context. And starting from my home country, Rwanda, it's a country that we really face many different traumatic events, including genocide, and where one tribe kill another tribes, and you can imagine that deep trauma. And of course, Trauma's generation is not only what we experience, but also what we hear, what we see. All those affect us. Now learning a group, remember, is a healing group. It's people with wounds. To me, when I face a challenge, I see that's normal. It's normal. That's what should be done, because these are people with the wounds, and normally it's by pain that we know we are alive. If we don't feel that pain, then it's what is not normal then. Yeah, so when I had such experience, when maybe through conversation, we tell people to open up and share, and sometimes what we share can affect another party, which is normal. So as a facilitator, when you are not on that level to understand your role, what are you doing? You can be upset, you can even be confused. But when you know, I put together these groups because it's wounded. It's people who need the hearing. Of course, when you're a medical doctor and you have people are vomiting, have fever, this is what is normal. In fact, that's what you are looking for, is to help people understand themselves and now receiving hearing. Of course, the member of group, they are not on the same level. They don't understand. When someone bring a word which can trigger or assault someone else, for the person is innocently sharing what he has. And another side also is listening without knowing that the person is doing it purposely or not. Now, that's when the facilitator has to come in with skills of understanding fast. That's normal. So it's good to have the group to know that it's normal and it's good, it's not bad. Now you help both sides to understand themselves. And normally in hearing groups, that's what we do. You hear me, I hear you. I help you, you help me. Yeah. It's like, share with me almost. I'll share with my wounds, and then at the end we'll see that we need each other for recovery. So far the experience I had in my people in Rwanda, there are many, and sometimes it's more hard when it's you facilitator now who is a trigger.
This is a really good point. I want to get to this, but I want to highlight one thing you just said. It's normal. Most of the time we want to avoid conflict and we think conflict is the problem, but I think I hear you saying that in fact, if we don't get to the level of conflict, we're probably not dealing with the pain. So let's not be so afraid of it. But I think this next point that you're going to make is really important. What happens when I'm the one unknowingly creating the problem, right?
Yeah. In fact, I think this is general. Sometimes people think that if you didn't experience the same, you can't understand their pain. Okay, it's like you are lucky. You have a reason why to smile. Let us cry because we experience what you don't know anyway. When you know that as a facilitator, you have to understand. You have to understand that it's normal. It's normal, and it's healthy. It's healthy. And now what you do, or we do in our professional counseling to help people once, building trust is the first thing. If you don't build trust, then it will be hard for people to open up. And the trust is built and is rebuilt. You can build it or you can destroy it. It's quite good to understand it may take time for you to build trust. What I have been doing and what I do even now, because I face that, you give people space. You give people space, you understand, you listen, you show your love, you show your availability. And then people will test, will take time to see, can I really trust her? At the first time, people will share artificially. They not go deep because they are trying you. They are trying to see if you can really empathize, if you can understand. When you show your heart, you empathize, then with the time, people will open up. And this has been my encouragement. When I hear testimony at the end, people say, I couldn't believe you can help me. I couldn't believe, because it took me time to learn, to trust, and then I hug them. I say, yes, I understand. I understand. That it needs a passion for a facilitator. It needs love. It needs understanding. It needs to understand well what you are doing and be patient. And something else, which is very important, is that we are servants of God. All we do is not for our own. If we obey, I'm sure the one who heals wounds will give you words to talk, will give you attitude, will give you energy, will give you a good smile and share love, which will attract people. And even themselves, they're surprised how the healing took place. And I'm currently working in Mali. It's a Muslim country. Totally different culture with mine. Even French, I'm speaking French now. Now you can see I have to work on my side to build trust. Can you help me? Really, you Christian, can you understand me? We have different faith, but what heals is that love, the listening, the empathy, and the pain is the pain. When people came to us, when people came for healing, with the ones they have pain and they need healing. So if you come with the good techniques of helping to remove the pain, definitely they forget all other differences. Yeah, and this is what I've experienced, and I'm really proud that God has trusted me to be in Imari right now. For me, I see it as a promotion.
Wow.
It's a promotion because I've been helping a lot with my people. You know, when you're helping your people, now I'm in a different culture and different country, and I can really feel how I'm saving the road to save their lives and help people to heal. Yeah, that.
Baraka, that's great. You always give me something to think about. Like, I would be thinking about, I'm so far away from my home and my family, but you are able to see God's perspective as a promotion. So you're always encouraging and sometimes rebuking me, which I appreciate. Desiree, anything that you're hearing here that you just want to like highlight that was coming, that Baraka was talking about?
Yes, she has so much wisdom. And I agree with you. And I think one of the things that you were saying is that the facilitator really sets the tone, and they have to model. So when they get, if the group starts to have a lot of conflict, if we just get into the conflict and try to defend, or we take away from allowing it to the conflict to come to the place where it needs to be, right? Because we learn from the conflict, or we grow from the conflict. And so I think what you were saying is that, you know, we, in a lot of ways, we have to model it. I would just use that word of being at rest, at peace, pray. and our response is important. So if we're responding in peace and love and grace, the room begins to settle down. But yet address the conflict. So I think you were right on with your approach to that.
Yeah.
And I think also one of the things too is the facilitator isn't the only one, right? And so helping the group to respond that's outside of the conflict, because so someone might trigger one group over another. You know, in my experience, you know, sometimes African Americans, especially right now, are so angry, and they'll make a comment like, you know, I just can't stand all white people. And the whole room might go, and, you know, allowing others in the room to begin to respond in a gracious way begins to deal with the conflict.
Yeah, that's really good. I'm, as you both are talking about, I'm thinking about, there are some challenges that we have to deal with inside ourselves as facilitators. One, if we get anxious and run ahead, like we try to shut it down, that'll be a problem.
Right.
So what I heard you saying is, has patience, give space, give people that even if they're saying something that might be offensive, that they are still a valued member of the group. And so it's worth having it brought to the surface, right? Whether they're saying, I can't stand this other group. There is, you know, not avoiding silence is a problem. We need to avoid silence. We need to speak to it, but invite the group to participate rather than us just being the only one talking about it, right? And then, you know, moving the dialogue just a little bit towards something that the whole group can be. So we're looking like, okay, this is a key point, but how can we shape it just slightly with a different question or a different way of engaging it? So I really like both of these points. I'm wondering, we'll start with you, Baraka, and then Desiree, I'll come back to you. When, maybe you can think of a time when you were the trigger, when you said something that brought something up. You didn't plan it, but it did. And they sort of come back at you. How did you go about handling it? What was the thing that you did in order to keep the conversation going in a healthy way?
Yeah, I once had experience when I was facilitating a group, and one of the members was really wounded, and he kept making comments and even asking questions, and I could see directly that he's talking about me. And I gave time to listen, and I turn around with the question, even give other people space. What do you think? But he came back insisting, like, yeah, even mention openly, like, I don't think this kind of tribe can understand, you know, and he knows very well, maybe it's my tribe too. Like, or I did because I know and I appreciate that he's being honest. He's being honest, and which is good. And one of things maybe I can support the facilitator. It's very easy to be biased, like kind of apologize or feeling guilty to praise the facilitators or to make the discussion easy. Sometimes people can even take the guilty just to make things cool down, but that doesn't help. It's good to be yourself, be who you are. Yeah. Be who you are, because it's you, and it's our identity. We can't change it. And I remember giving example to everyone, and I was like, is anyone doing application of choosing their parents or their nationality? Is anyone who did a test? Maybe you did a test, you passed, and then you become American, I become a Rwandan? No, it's not by choice. It's not by choice. That means when we accept our identity, we are praising our God. It's God who gave us our identity, who choose for us to be who we are. Especially, I never choose my appearance. I never choose to be black. Philly didn't choose to be white. We just found ourselves this way. And if we believe in our Creator, we honor Him, then we honor and be proud of who we are and respect our differences. And I think I help them. I even give them a funny exercise. I told them to go and bring the leaves of tree. Everyone will bring different kind of leaves of tree, different. And they brought different color, different size, different shape. And then we say, which is better than other one? No, they're just leaves. You know, I think it's good to be who we are and accept, understand. And I'm sure at the end of group, this was my best friend. And if I even talk to me, it's like, it's you that I was talking about. And then I say, yes, I listen to you. And that's my role, to listen to you. So thank you. That's an example. And that's what I can share.
Excellent example of way that you were able to see what was happening, of course, be aware of it, but also to show honor. Even by the way you engage them, and then use these illustrations. Desiree, I'll just ask you similar kind of questions. You kind of know, as a facilitator, you have a bit more power because you're in the driver's seat, right? You're kind of shaping what's going on, but somebody, of course, is maybe unbeknownst to you, or until that moment, offended by something or deciding to be offended by you. How have you, figured out how to bring that to the surface and handle it in a group?
Yeah, and I think I have to be honest, especially with the pandemic and the tensions right now. And, I have to first be aware where I'm at. I think that's the biggest thing, is being definitely very prayerful and reminded that I may be short fused in a lot of ways with everything going on and pressure. So as a facilitator, I'm definitely being mindful of where I'm at. And then I don't take it personal. Because I think right now it is, and recognizing our culture right now is so heated that, and with it, especially with the church, you have a really divide between the African Americans voting one way and white Americans voting another. It's just that tension. So recognizing, don't take it personal. And that, like I think Baraka said it, key is that Christ is the center of all of this. And if we can keep our centering on the fact that I'm human before I'm Black. That person's human, created by God, instead of making The division first is keeping the mindset of where I'm at and taking that crisis first, and then I could cool down. I could cool down and say, I'm not going to allow the enemy to win, and then begin to navigate. But I have to get myself. I have to make sure my barometer is not going up or not being triggered or wanting to respond, especially right now with everything going on.
Good, that's excellent. You know, there's one thing I'm thinking about for both of you. As you know, we've done groups in lots of places and with lots of different people. That's really simple, practical thing that I imagine you both do, and we just take it for granted, but that is setting good group rules at the beginning, right? One thing that really helps us, if we've talked about it at the beginning and something starts, we can refer back to, oh, let's remember our group rules, right? If we forget those things and we get going, then we don't have anything to look back to say what our standard was going to be for how we would care for each other. So you guys have really brought up some really good things. I just want to highlight a couple of them, Baraka, while we still have you here. You know, just the idea that the Holy Spirit is in this. This is an opportunity, not just a crisis. It is an opportunity. And Desiree, you bring up how much we ourselves are involved in it. And so if we're not prayed up, if we're not ready, if we're, you know, not aware of our biases, Baraka, you said, we might find ourselves being short-fused with people or rejecting. But then just really giving people the respect that even if what they're saying is not kind or good, respecting them as a person enough to be able to say, this is a good conversation to have. How can we have it? Including the group members. You're not alone. Asking them, does anybody have another opinion on this? Baraka, I remember a time when we were doing some work together and a man said something that was fairly offensive to the women in the room, and he was rather a minority. There were more women than men. And it was handled so well. There were different things that were said and allowed for the women to be able to speak to him and to them, and it just continued to go so well. So I know we have all had those things, and we don't assess in the moment that even if the feathers are ruffled, as we would say, that's the end of the story, right? That this is an opportunity for conversations to go on. And Baraka, I love at the end of your training, this person is now a friend. This person says to you, I didn't know you could help me. That meant you did build the trust, right? He felt valued.
Wow, such wisdom and wealth of knowledge from Dr. Phil, Reverend Desiree. Baraka, thank you so much. Baraka couldn't be with us due to bandwidth issues, but we are so happy that we were able to get this pre-recorded for you guys. This next portion will be live, so again, please continue to chat in. I see there was a lot of things that were resonating with you, specifically about mindful about where you are. How am I showing up in this conflict? And we're going to do an exercise at the end of this interview section to really discover, where am I? How do I respond in the midst of conflict? So please hang with us for the rest of the program. We're going to dive into a deeper conversation. Again, this one will be live with Heather Drew and Reverend Desiree Guyton. If you're just now joining us, we are talking about how to have difficult conversations in healing groups, specifically around sensitive and emotionally charged subjects. We are living in a day right now where everyone is on heightened alert. We're all feeling pretty sensitive and aware of what's going on around us. And we want to find some really practical tools on how to create a safe space in healing groups for our participants and for ourselves. And so we're going to get deeper into that. I want to introduce to you two of my friends, and I'm really excited to have them here. First, you heard from her a little bit, but we have Reverend Desiree Guyton. She is the founder and executive director of Quest Movement Ministries. She's a licensed professional counselor, and she has earned both her Master of Divinity and Master of Arts in Counseling from Biblical Theological Seminary. She's a proud mother of 2 sons and the grandmother of 2 boys. Next, Heather Drew. Heather Drew is a writer, a speaker, teacher, and a licensed professional counselor. She's currently on staff at American Bible Society as the Senior Manager of Trauma Healing Product Development. She holds a Master of Arts in Professional Counseling and a postgraduate certificate in Global Trauma Recovery. Heather aims to live and love fiercely. She relates to life as fully as possible, not as a formula, but expressing herself authentically and intentionally. I've witnessed this, I've experienced this, and I'm so happy to have both of these women here with us. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Lots of people saying hello in the chat.
Thank you.
Heather, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
All right, so Des had some lovely things to say in the video, and since we have her live, I wanted to expand a little bit on some of her own wisdom for you all. She has a lot of wisdom to share. I've been the recipient of much of it, so I wanted to ask you a few questions, Des, so we can expand on some of these ideas. So one of the things that you mentioned in the video that we just watched is that trust needs to be built. That was discussed in the video. There's not much that we can control sometimes in conflict, but what we can control is how we build trust. So I would love to hear you talk about what are some of the effective and practical ways of building trust in groups or relationships that may have conflict.
Oh, that's a great question, Heather. Thank you, everyone, for allowing me to come and be with you guys today. I think trust in healing groups, of course, we all know that's like a key. And the biggest thing, most people want to be listened to. And so if you create a safe space where there can be heard, not cut off, I think Phil said some key things in setting the proper ground rules, so you can create that safe space. But when conflict is starting to rise, I think part of our role is to help continue to listen, to create that listening space. But while you're creating that listening space, is to recap the comments that people are saying, to clarify, because a lot of times especially if emotions starting to rise, they're not making their statements clear, And so if we're in person, I could use the board or things to kind of help. When we're on Zoom doing healing groups, there's just other dynamic, right? Because it's kind of hard to begin to manage. So I think, number one rule, I think all of us have agreed, is that you never do any of these healing groups by yourself, right? Mm-hmm. So
definitely.
So we're hoping that and on Zoom in some ways make things in some ways easier if you have to use a breakout room and help you and another facilitator work on the things. But before you get to that, you just really want to create that safe space by recapping the comments. And I think the exercises really help. When we do the proper exercise in the group, giving the ample time for people to talk. And that's a big complaint. Especially with Zoom, people say, the breakout 10 minutes is not enough time, because you don't get to have that water cooler conversation when you're in person, right? And so between the in-person, when you get to have those water cooler conversations if you're in person, right? And so you want to do that. You want to continue to find out what the conflict is and begin to give voice to it. And I think that's the key thing. I had to be reminded by that recently too, was speak of the elephant in the room, especially with race conflict right now, is speak of it, bring it out, start it. And this way people know and give both sides and try to be balanced with both sides. And I think that builds trust. I think when you can recap words and comments and on both sides and helping each other to hear each other, then the conflict can sometimes go down because the person feels heard. And that's usually what most people want, is they want to feel heard.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said this water cooler conversation. Not everyone around the world may resonate with that metaphor, but we think about all of the countries in Africa we've visited. Tea time is or so coffee break. It is interesting, and the conflict lesson in the book talks about this, that having a meal with someone, having ordinary kinds of conversations and ordinary life activities with other people actually builds a lot of trust in a way that we may not expect. That is a difficult part about the online world that we're in, unfortunately. I wonder if anybody has any ideas about how to do this online, please put it in the chat and we'll soak it all up. It's a good idea to collect those as much as possible. Thanks, Des, that's helpful. Another question that I have for you is, what are some of one of the things you said in the video that I loved is we want to both honor what's in the room, but we also want to address what's in the room as a facilitator. Again, we want to think practically, like what does it look like to be practicing honoring someone in the room while also addressing what's in the room for everybody's benefit?
Yeah, and I think this is very, very important. I teach my young people in therapy. When I try to teach empathy, I say you put yourself in someone else's shoes, right? Mm-hmm. And so part of in conflict is to be able to help the room to put themselves in the other person's shoes, right? As well as the other person being to put on my shoes. And in order to do that, it's first accepting that the conflict is there, giving voice to that conflict, mm-hmm. outlining what that conflict really is. And so can I give an example? Right now a huge one is there systematic racism, right? And that right now is a hot item. And and so when we teach in generational trauma, that we don't use the word systematic racism. We talk about power or less power. And helping people to understand that if I'm, as an African American, at times feel less power in America, yet I have power. So I have to be able, because I have power when I walk in, I also have power, in certain contexts. And so I'm not always powerless. And so helping to give voice to the conflict and saying, putting yourself in other people's shoes and being able to understand I have power, as well as there's times that things happen in our society that I can have less power. And so we have to help people to honor that sometimes you have power, and then when power is being misused, you can also be misusing it. And so it builds a much more, and so I'll say it in a Christian way, because that's what Christ brings to us to show us is that I'm a sinner, I have to forgive others, but I'm also need to be forgiven. So there's two. I have to forgive others and I have to forgive because, so part of Christianity is understanding that I'm a sinner, but yet I'm also can be sinned against. Mm-hmm. And so we have to understand conflict is that way too. And when we're having these hard conversations is not always to be the victim, is to understand that I'm moving towards understanding both and being able to navigate, and that Christ, when we center ourselves in Christ, we understand that, if I put myself in that person's shoes, I may have made the same decision. Mm-hmm. Wow. and so when I come to that understanding that, if I had all of this power, I may have made, as a sinner, as a human being, I may really have done that. So then as a victim, I don't want to be that person. So you don't want people to be victimized. So, you ground yourself in the Christian principles, and then you honor and but in order to do that, you have to be able to manage yourself. Mm-hmm. Yes, that can be nice. You really have to be able to manage and allow the Holy Spirit to manage you. Really, it's saying, I'm getting triggered right now, but you know what? She's my brother and sister. Yeah. In spite of what's coming out of their mouth, she's my brother and sister. And when you can do that, you can begin to honor and navigate. I hope I answered the question.
Oh, you did, and more. That's a great answer. And just saying this, thinking about being other focused means I stop focusing on my offendedness, my feeling, and thinking, what might this other person be feeling that's creating this response? And I think when we can actually zoom out and not just get caught up in the emotion going back and forth, it's really helpful to be able to say, okay, here's what I'm feeling. That's an honoring of my emotion, because it's important to honor our own emotions that are happening and the things that are coming up for us. So honoring, oh yeah, I'm feeling this way. And I'm honoring, oh, this person's probably feeling this way based on what they're saying and how they're acting. So managing our responses, I think actually we do good work when we honor what's happening for ourselves and the other person, and like just starting there and saying, yeah, this tells me something. It's a signal. It's a notification that something's going on, right? And then not just interpreting that as like something has to happen right now. I have to respond right now, and then be very reactive.
And can I say one more other thing is,
Please.
I don't have to be right.
Right.
You know, if I can just rest in the fact, I just don't have to be right. You know, and so I don't have to prove myself. I don't have anything I can't make you change. So when I relieve yourself of all that pressure, that I can't make you come on my side and you can't make me go on your side. So let's just rest in the fact that we disagree. And so I don't have to be right. And I think that kills a whole lot of a conflict, you know, or at least when I have to navigate it. I don't have to make this person believe in systematic racism or whatever. I don't have to make this person believe that there's, you know, things happening to my people. Instead, I'm just here to be a light, a vessel. You either grab onto the truth or not.
Yeah.
Between you and God.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
From my perspective, though, right?
That is such a good point. No, that is such a good point, though, because this actually reminds me of Philippians 2, a couple verses down. It's, you know, this picture of Jesus giving away his power. Like, he recognizes his own power and he has all the power, but yet he uses it so tenderly, but also like it's very kind, very loving, but very powerful. And I think being able to say, I don't have to be right, that's a form of power. That's a form of saying, I'm going to be the bigger person here and just know that I don't need to express how right I am and just be with this other person in love. Yeah, that's great. Wonderful. Another thing, so this is, I think, an important part of, I just remembered this as I was listening to you on the video, but one of the things I've heard you say in our local community of practice here in the Philly, New Jersey area is that one of the most effective tools you found in your own life is finding a relaxed body and coming into a space where you recognize how conflict is showing up in your body when you're sitting in a room and addressing that and honoring that first. I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit, just giving people some tips of how they might recognize some of that.
Wow, yeah, that's a mouthful, right? You know, one is recognizing what triggers you, right? So there's certain words or things, and when you recognize those, you have to realize how your body's responding to it. So, you know, for me, my neck gets a little tense, and you know, I may even get a little headache or whatever. And then you know, I have this thing in couples counseling called the love bank. You know, you have people talk about, and so I actually use or thermometer is another visual. Is where am I? You know, if I've been rushing around all day and I've had a lot of this things, and then I'm entering into this space of managing people, and I'm all the way up here. I have to start to breathe. I have to start to relax. I have to pray first and say, God, this is where I'm at, giving voice to that. This is where I'm at, and I need just supernatural power. See, I love the Peter story because, you know, before Jesus died, Peter denied him. But in Acts 2, he preaches this dynamic message, right? So in order to become to this place, he had to have a major encounter with God, right? He had to have a major encounter with Jesus. And, you know, he had lunch on the beach with him, or breakfast or something on the beach with him. And he's had these encounters with him in order to come to a place where he could do Acts 2. So for me to be Acts 2 type of disciple, I have to continually put myself in this relationship that says, I need supernatural power to be able, and when I mean, I'm not trying to be mystical, I'm trying to say, you know what, I believe that same resurrecting power that raised Jesus from the dead,
right.
I need that right now, because I'm entering this space with white people and black people
Yes.
who and white evangelicals who are on this side, and black African Americans on this side, and right now we're gonna have a bombshell. But Lord, you know, no, really, you know, there's not going to always be. So if this bombshell I'm going to walk in, Lord, I need you
Yeah.
to begin to relaxing. So then relaxed body means I start to breathe. I start to do the practical things. Like right now, you know, I went bike riding this morning, 10 miles, because I have to get into a relaxed body, because tonight I'm going to be leading one of those healing groups, making sure I am doing those things, not overbooking my time, you know, as facilitator, watching how you're booking your day before you enter this space. Because a healing group or equipping is sacred space. And so how I enter that space is important. So, you know, making sure that I am mentoring people, making sure that I'm spending time with them, making sure, you know, the people that I'm going to co-facilitate, how are they doing? How are they mentally and emotionally handling things? Because we all got to be in a space. And I have to model that. I have to model breathing, relaxing myself, doing relaxation techniques where I tighten your muscles and relax them, all those type of things before I get into that space. I don't know if that was a long answer. I'm sorry.
No, that is so helpful. And it's interesting because you said that there was two things I picked up. You talked about the breakfast on the beach. You know, Peter being in a process is the only way he could possibly get to Acts 2. We talk about in our program how healing is a process. It's not like a point in time, one point in time. It's actually a process. And that if we don't accept every little bit of our journey, like, okay, today I'm here, tomorrow I might be there, being where you are, owning that, like being responsible for that information is really good. And not entering a healing group if I'm hungry, angry, lonely, tired, thirsty, whatever. And again, bringing yourself back to like, breathing, making sure you have food, making sure you have rest, making sure you have exercise. You got to pump the blood through the veins. That's a God-given body to take care of.
Yeah, this is so rich. Our audience is really resonating so much. The chat is just blowing up with appreciation for experiencing what's happening in our bodies, what's happening in our feelings, understanding that only God, only Holy Spirit can help us in these really difficult conversations. So much of what you're saying, Desiree, people are really resonating with. So thank you for your wisdom and sharing so vulnerably. I do have a question from the audience, and it's about the healing group, like going into the healing group. And Teresa is curious that if you think the initial preparation of the healing group ahead of time helps you handle these offensive statements. Do you think that's helpful, or do you think that would be helpful? So just some thoughts about the initial preparation before the healing group.
Yeah, with right now, especially because everything's online, we've had to amp that up a little bit, make that higher. Sorry, I shouldn't have to get international audience. We have to make that higher priority. So we've been finding ourselves having an hour before, day before, that we get together, that we pray online, and we actually making sure when we go through the lesson, having those type of things prepped. In generational trauma, we actually have what we call managing racial conversation as a part of the logistics, and able to helping people to look at how do you handle these emotions? How do you handle it when someone's doing these type of behaviors and what should the facilitator kind of do? Just some kind of prep. And we actually do a mock skit even online to kind of help them to navigate that. And I think it's critical that you have those. And everyone who's going through it has said that was a critical process, because it helps them to really think about if someone's talking too much or giving a lot of misinformation. What do you do? What do you do if someone's angry? Someone's just constantly just trying to prove their point. What do you do? And so those are very important things.
Wonderful. Yeah. And have you, specifically with generational trauma, and maybe even for other healing groups, have you found yourself preparing the group? Like, this is going to be a tense topic. I think that's what Teresa was also clarifying in the chat. Do you prepare the group for this might be difficult?
We are doing more of that.
Okay.
We've had our first online training. We had some more conflict that we didn't realize we didn't prep the group enough. And it wasn't conflict verbal, like inside. It was conflict that people were having inside that they didn't necessarily verbalize on Zoom. It was what was going on in their world that we could not, we didn't have the tea time,
right,
or to be able to work through those.
Mhm.
And so with that, what we realized that we had to go back and do our welcome session differently to prep people better of what was going to come. And I think we had to improve on that. So yes, I want to say absolutely prep the people. In a sense, you could do it with not, this is, this is where we're at. This is the foundation of what we're trying to accomplish, but we're moving towards healing. I think because sometimes when you're in the midst of the conflict, especially in generational trauma, we come out the gate with it, right? And so we have to remind people we're not going to stay here. This is not, our goal isn't to stay in what you did to people, the power, but it's to get to the place where it's healing.
We are at 10:52, but I do want to ask this one final question, which Heather was going to kind of get into, but someone asked it and I don't want to ignore it in the chat, which is, have you ever gotten to the point where you've had to exclude someone from a group? Duncan is asking that question. So briefly, can you just tell us about, have you ever had to exclude someone from the group and maybe some best practices around that?
You mean exclude them from the healing group?
From the healing group.
No, I have not.
Okay.
Yeah, we have not. We've had at times some heated things happen, but what everyone has said is they felt heard. They felt that in their space, in their small groups, that they were heard, that they were able to address. And so, no, I have not had to exclude anyone. Now, if we had to not allow someone to become a facilitator, which is a little different, but we always, for us, we build in mentorship, saying that, look, we're not saying you can't ever be a facilitator. You just have to do it with me or someone with senior facilitator skills, master, skills a couple times to make sure you're getting hold of it. So no, we've never had exclude. We haven't had a problem with it yet. Doesn't mean it won't come.
Doesn't mean it won't happen, yeah. Well, I know that there's a couple more questions in the chat. Mitzi, I see you asking about what are some examples. Desiree will be in the chat. She'll be able to answer some of those questions in the chat. And we want to leave just a few minutes for some self-check-in. Again, you guys really resonated with that portion of the conversation. And I want to make sure that we have some space to do that. So Heather, Reverend Des, thank you so much. Any final words from you, Heather? I didn't get a chance to.
I put a couple things in the chat about just being aware that creating growth plans for facilitators who aren't quite ready to have these kinds of conversations or don't know themselves well enough, not just all outright saying, no, you're never going to be a facilitator, but just sort of saying, hey, let's work together. Kind of like what Des said, having a really nice amount of built-in mentorship and discipleship and growth oriented. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Yes, Wendy, there is an activity, so hold on. Have a great day, ladies. Again, what we heard today was a lot about how to check in with yourself before you even go into these healing groups. I love that Reverend Des this morning is aware that she's gonna lead a pretty intense healing group tonight. And so this morning, she took a bike ride even before this call. And I so appreciated her sharing. She knew exactly what she needed and she did that for herself. And so I'm gonna ask a couple of questions as we close out our time for you to consider. If you have a notebook, it might be good for you to just jot a couple things down. If you don't have a notebook, use the chat and interact with each other. And so just a couple questions. Before we get into that, just take a deep breath. There's so much, I think we need a part 2 of how to have difficult conversations. It was so rich and there's so much more that we could say about this. Let's just take a deep breath and take it all in. And I just want to ask a simple question. How are you? How are you? How are you feeling emotionally? Reverend Des talked about feeling, tension in her shoulders. For me, I feel a lot in my belly. Where do you feel your tension? So how are you? And where are you feeling tension in your body? And you can write that in the chat so we can just bear witness. Yeah, your mind, your shoulders, emotions, your heart, back. Yeah. Lots of shoulders and neck. Tears coming, clenched teeth. I see you. I see you. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Needing some deep breaths. So maybe we'll just do that. I had a couple more questions that I wanted to ask, but it seems like we just need to breathe. So if you can close your eyes and just get in a comfortable position. And I know that we are in really, really difficult times right now. There's so much happening, especially just all over the world. In America, in Africa, in South America, in Europe, we see you on this call. There's so much tension happening around us. And so my hope and my prayer is that through this breathing exercise that you can find some stillness and peace on the inside. So if you can, just take a deep breath in through your nose. And just let it out. Just keep breathing. If you can, on the exhale, just sigh it out as loud as you can. Breathe in and then out. It might be shaky, you might be feeling tears, but breathe in the breath of God into all the tense places that you just mentioned. As you inhale, breathe life into your mind, breathe life into your shoulders. Exhale the tension. Keep breathing. And consider what you want to feel. We've already shared what we do feel. Maybe consider what you want to feel. Jesus promises us rest and lightness when we bring our burdens to him. You are currently bringing your burdens to Jesus. As you write in the chat what you feel and your tension, that's you bringing your pain to Jesus. And he's saying, I have something in exchange for you. He has peace and joy, contentment, calmness. I see you writing these things. These are the things that you want from God. How to experience joy in the midst of trouble. Yeah, he sees it. You guys are making an exchange right now. He sees you and he hears you. So as you take a deep breath, the next breath, just imagine Jesus giving you everything that you need right now. What you've written in the chat, the clarity of mind and the peace. Imagine him giving that to you. My breath was a little shaky before and now it's smooth. I'm so grateful. Thank you, Jesus. And I hope yours is too. Keep breathing. I'm going to read a scripture over you. Therefore, I beg you to lead a life worthy of your calling, for you have been called by God. Always be humble and gentle. Be patient with each other, making allowance for each other's faults because of your love. Make every effort to keep yourselves unified in the Spirit, binding yourselves together with peace. For there is one body and one Spirit, just as you have been called to one glorious hope for the future. There is one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all, in all, in living through all. Amen. I want to share some things with you that you can practically take with you as you transition into your day. Specifically for our facilitators, we have some action items for you to consider. We want you to take a look at lesson 10. Just review that we have this in our materials. Someone asked, what are our materials? I have my books here. We have a whole chapter on living as a Christian in the midst of conflict. And then reflect on, how does God respond to conflict? Which verses remind you of these attributes of God's character? And what have you learned from a past conflict? And I'll add, how do you see Jesus in the person that you're having conflict with? Reverend Desiree talks about honor. How do you honor the person that seems so very different from you, but we know is made in the image of God? So how do you honor them? Our next slide. After this webinar, you're going to get a survey that'll pop up. If you could take that survey and let us know what this time was like for you, we want to always be hearing feedback so that we can make sure that the next webinar is beneficial, although it sounds like we might need a part 2 of this. You can register for upcoming trauma healing trainings, healing groups, and events. I know it's been asked of for a long time to have healing groups added to our events page. They are now on our events page, and if you have a healing group that is open, please send those over to us. But you can find them at the website listed here, traumahealinginstitute.org/events. Next, follow us on social media. A lot of you guys already follow us on Facebook and Instagram, but you may not know that on our YouTube page, you can subscribe to our page and get an email whenever a video is made available, including this webinar. You'll get an email already because you've registered, but you can also find all of our previous webinars on the YouTube page, and you'll get an automatic prompt if you subscribe to the YouTube page. I want to thank you for joining us again. And I will hang out in the chat and see how everyone is doing. I'm going to pray for you. God, thank you so much for this time, for this space to just breathe and be and understand that we are not alone in having these difficult conversations. I pray that we would become so aware of your presence with us. We love you and we bless those in this community of practice. In Jesus' name, amen. Have a great day, everyone.